Good evening, everyone, and welcome to what is episode 223 of Into the Outer Realms. And I am your interstellar host and the cosmic and also Route 66 traveler, Joey Media. I can't say that this is a one of a kind anymore because I wore this at AAA Roadfest this past June, and someone in the audience in my presentation, a version of what you're going to see tonight, wanted one. So Tanya, made one for him, sent it to him. These are available if anybody's interested. I think they're about 20-25 bucks maybe with the shipping, but there's only two of us that have these, and mine's the only one maroon one. I believe his is gray. But anyway, welcome. It's really exciting when any two things that I love, and you all know I love so many things, come together. And Route 66 for me, my son Jeremy turns 30 years old tomorrow. You'll hear his orchestral talents, his music composition talents, in just a couple of minutes when I play the opening. Jeremy is a sophomore at the Berklee College of Music. He also runs a successful high-end event catering business in New York, and he is just kind of a workaholic like his dad in the very, very best ways. But I'm very excited to take you through this. I have a slideshow. You can see some of the places. Depending on where you live in the country, might not be that far away from me as we move on to celebrating the centennial, the 100th anniversary of Route 66. More and more people are going to be on the route, and you happen to be on the route, or you want to plan a paranormal trip. Now, you will see in this slideshow that I use this for people who aren't acquainted with the show, don't know who I am, barely know who I am. So I'm going to move quickly through the beginning, through the first dozen or so slides, but then we're going to go state by state, east to west, as you classically do, starting in Illinois and moving through to California, not Santa Monica, but somewhere in San Bernardino, I think, is where I finish up. And along the way, we're going to pause and spend a little time, not only at the atomic age, and 2 weeks ago I did 1947, so much to do with Arizona, New Mexico, close proximity to Route 66, but on Route 66, 1953, supposedly a UFO crash. So this has gotten the attention of a very well-known researcher out in Kingman who had kind of heard about it, sort of dismissed it, and is really looking into it. I'm going to tell you about that because I'm going to be on his radio Sunday. So let's roll the open and get right into this. I like to keep these to an hour or a little more. So welcome and get ready to get your supernatural kicks on Route 66.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
All right. So, like I said, I have the slideshow, so let me put it up here. The formal title, which one of the moderators and one of my business partners at Roadfest said, Joey comes up with the longest titles. And yeah, I guess I do. Supernatural 66, UFOs, Hauntings, and Other Mysterious Happenings on the Mother Road. And I have their 67 Chevy Impala Supernatural baby. And they spend quite a bit of time on Route 66 in their travels. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm going to move pretty quickly because for our core audience, this is all very, very familiar. The journey so far really starts in 2009. I was really not into the paranormal, although I grew up amidst the supernatural. As a Catholic, I figured that out as we started doing radio shows, and people, it's a standard question, and we do it all the time. When did you first notice this stuff or things like that? So anyway, we went down to Point Pleasant 2009. Everybody knows the story. There's a picture of the igloo there, and I don't know if I've ever shown this before, or I haven't in a very, very long time, but those are the two pictures that Tanya and I drew separately without discussing what we had seen of what we saw. From there, Point Pleasant has really become like an old friend, but strange days indeed here. August 2009, Tanya saw the being on the right. I saw the being on the left. I've shown this several times on the show for different reasons. People have become interested again. These things kind of flow in waves with hearing the full thing about our abduction missing time experience. 2 hours and 45 minutes or so we lost, and then underwent hypnotic regression several years ago, quite a while ago now, and found out some things, and an artist generated, Tanya generated the one on the right of what she saw, and an artist friend of mine who's done a lot of sketching for paranormal shows on cable television did the one on the left. He volunteered. I had sent him the transcripts, and he said, I'd really love to draw this. So there it is. I'm learning a lot about that. Bruce Rapawano, who was on the show, Dr. Rapawano, I'm reading his unabridged book, Dominion Lost, and there's some cool things that illuminate some of these things. So you can go to our Facebook. It was November, I believe 3 or 4 years ago. It was one of the first shows we did, and you can find the interdimensionals or private message me, and I'll be happy to send you a link, as I've done some other people, and you can hear Tanya and I kind of tell the whole story there. So let's see what we got here. My mentor, of course, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, Joe's wife. So many years, well over a decade. We went into the field with Rosemary, kept our mouths shut, learned as much as we could, wound up publishing Tanya's book, and a book that Tanya and I co-wrote, of course. There's Rosemary in Point Pleasant. It all sort of is about Point Pleasant. That's where the experience happened, all of that kind of good stuff. That's Rosemary and I at the festival on the left one year, and on the right, there's Rosemary. We were braving it. This is most likely November, because November 15th and around in those environments when the Mothman was first really seen in 1966, with the spirit box there, doing our thing. And of course, that led to the Webb Memorial Library. That was 2016, 2017, 150 hours, 75 nights, and Watch Out for the Hallway, which was the book that Rosemary published from Tanya and I at Visionary Living Publishing. And then we went on to do Roommates from Beyond, which continues to sell very well. It sells all the time, which is really terrific. A handbook. And of course, it came to these shows. So like I said, I'm moving quickly. You're watching the shows, so you know. Am I going this year to the festival? No. We can't make it, but the escape room's going very well. It's actually going to be open the Friday and Sunday of the festival. Festival is kind of my least favorite time, because I go to the beach in the winter. Like, I'm not crazy about crowds and all that kind of stuff. Sitting here doing my podcast, you're probably not surprised. But anyway, no, but lots of friends will be down there, and there were it was not going to be open, the escape room, and I think that's the next slide. So let me just get there. Live It Experiences, Mothman Escape Room. I'll talk about Live It towards the end of the show, but there. The Mothman Escape Room is going to be open Friday and Sunday. They opened 10 slots. They weren't going to open any at all, but popular demand. It's going really well. And I think 6 out of the 10 are already sold out. They just went up a couple days ago. So if you want to do the escape room and you're going to the Mothman Festival, go ahead and do that there. But there you go. Mothman prophecies. And this is really what it's about for me. And this really sets up my approach to doing this Supernatural 66 presentation on radio and in person. And I hope I get a chance to do it lots and lots of times. But Keel said this in the Mothman prophecies: I am no longer interested in the manifestation of the phenomena. We know it exists. We've seen it. It's beyond a doubt. I'm pursuing the source of the phenomena itself. And that's what I've been dedicating a lot of time to do, especially in the past 4 or 5 years. As Tanya's moved away from the field, as Rosemary's passed away, I have shifted my angle. And I'm really curious about what makes these things work. And we're talking quantum physics and all that. But tonight, we're going to look at geography. We're going to look at architecture, especially. We're going to look at energies, intentions, and those kinds of things. Yeah, that's a terrific, Joe. Someday I want to, I do the Chautauqua. I do historical characters. I'd really love to, go back with the black hair dye and all. And I think I could pull off John Keel. What do you all think? I think I could even have that hat there. Maybe do some walking tours in Point Pleasant and tell people as the experience as John Keel. If that's on my bucket list to do, if only there were 28 hours in a day and 8 days in a week. Here's the other thing that when we really got into it here, you notice them and they notice that you notice them, which is Mothman prophecies. That's really what it was for us. So going back to that encounter with those beings that we saw, they noticed us. And they very well seem to have noticed, based on the transcripts of the regression hypnosis and different people we've talked to, and our own kind of maturing into the knowledge of what might have happened to us. We think kind of that's what went on. So thank you. I'm getting some votes of confidence there doing Keel. So I think I am going to try to do that in the next couple of years. It could be very cool. So let's get started here, shall we, with the road. So the road you get on in Chicago, right? 2,000 and something miles of greatness and very different personalities, just like the United States. So Illinois and Missouri, there's a lot of big cities there. A little more congested, citified. You get into Kansas, which is only 30 something miles, but some pretty terrific 30 something miles. And I made sure to include things for Kansas. Then you get into the plains, you get into Oklahoma, and then you go really out west, New Mexico, Arizona, and then you go into California, which of course is its own creature. So here's the Congress Plaza Hotel. Absolutely beautiful inside, as you can see, and it's haunted by various spirits. Hey, if I went there and I had a beautiful time, I would want to go back. And if I spent enough time there, maybe I wouldn't want to leave. And there's one ghost in particular. So if you go to the Congress Plaza Hall, there's a woman wandering named Pegleg. So there she is. So that's the Congressional Hotel there. Very interesting architecture. You'll see that a lot of these big hotels sort of have these double wings with space in the middle. And I believe energy moves interestingly, right? Chicago, the windy city. So they're probably pushing a good bit of air pressure through there. And it could be adjusting things and playing with energy and creating energy spikes that allow these things to happen. Next we have the Inn at 835. This is in Springfield, Illinois. This is built in the early 1900s by Belle Miller, who's seen around the inn. Now, this is a classic thing with hotels, motels. The people that built them, bed and breakfast often have the ghosts of the people who originally built the house. Of course, that is it's connection to the land. It's the history to the property. If you built it with your own hands, you communed with all these organic materials. Tanya and I worked on a case in Southwest Pennsylvania where the original owner had walked it wasn't the original owner, it was his sister. They had lived there together. He died and the courts were trying to take it away and give it to a male relative. She walked like 6 miles in the snow to the courthouse and back. That creates a really strong attachment. There's a really strong commitment. Now, oftentimes these are residual hauntings, so you can't talk to them. They always appear at the same time, in the same place. They walk the same path. Even if there's a manifestation, the smell of cigar smoke still may be a residual haunting. Nobody you want to get rid of, nobody you could get rid of if mistakenly you wanted to get rid of them, and no one that you can actually converse with because they're not there, but their imprint is there. We've heard fascinating things. When I did my presentation at Roadfest, some of my friends from Tulsa came and they said, when we first moved into our house for the first year, we could not go left and go into the kitchen. We had to go to the right and go all the way around. And my feeling was, and it's just, an intuition of an investigator with some years of experience, is that that was the path that the dominant personality in the house took. After a year, it just kind of went away. That energy diminished. They probably did. There were probably times where they defied that and they sort of created their own energy path through the house, which overtook it. And then, someday, when they're no longer in the house, someone may move in and they'll go, oh, geez, like we always have to go right to go into the kitchen. It's very odd. So there you go. But there's the inn. It's beautiful to me, kind of an Italianate. It's very classic with the columns, and the rooms are just beautiful. You're going to see all kinds of things when you stay on Route 66, from concrete wigwams and teepees and very small rustic cabins to a great amount of opulence. And I'll show you some pretty opulent things tonight. So moving on, this is the Joplin Motel. Look at this. Joplin, the Connor Hotel in Joplin, Missouri. Again, you sort of have the two wings that have the energy go through. I'm telling you, folks, I really think there's something to it. It's got that beautiful, I believe that's called a mansard style roof there. Just an absolutely gorgeous place. And there's a ghost of Bonnie there. Now, Bonnie died in the bathtub. Again, I'm guessing that this is a residual haunting. That is, of course, extremely traumatic. Plus, you have the presence of water, which is a conductor, probably helped to burn the impression of Bonnie between the fear, the death phase, the passing on, and all of that. And bathrooms are often very active. There's the tile, there's the water. There's the combination of materials that lend themselves very much to that same house I was talking about. The woman walked 6 feet back and forth. There was a spirit, an agitated ghost there, actually, with dementia, which was interesting. That was an encounter that Tanya and I had that some of these things will stay. And I think the ghost believes or has gotten so used to them that's why they're there. And she was keeping these kids up at night that lived there. One of the boys was in a sleep study and was taking sleeping pills, which is not good for a teenager to do. So we did some work to clean there with some help from Rosemary from Beyond. It was really, really cool. We may have talked about that story in more length. I believe that we do in Roommates from Beyond. We kind of tell that story in detail. So again, just a big sort of, not quite gothic, but just a wonderful looking grand motel that you would probably, the paranormal supernatural enthusiasts among you would go, oh yeah, I can see why that would be haunted. And quite frankly, it should be. It's value added. So there you go. Here's the Wagon Wheel Motel. So we're coming down a little from the hotels into the motel. This is one of the great iconic with its neon sign on Route 66, the Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri. A ghostly presence of a former owner. So there's that motif again, almost a trope. This is the oldest continuing operating motel on Route 66, and it was built in 1935. So they are like 91 years old now. That is really, really cool. I'm sure they're going to have a big splash, all really cool things, be totally booked up for the centennial. So if you want to go to the Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri, get your reservations in early. That's what I wish I could tell you that I knew somebody there. I don't yet, but I'm sure that will change. So here we go. So now we're moving into Texas. Baker Hotel, Mineral Wells, Texas. Look at this big, grandiose building. And again, that little bit of a depression there with the two wings. And it also similar, if you look here, and I apologize to our radio audience that listens to this on NERD, but you can always come check out the video anytime on YouTube or on my Facebook page or on the Into the Outer Realms Facebook page. I encourage you to do so. There you got that same kind of on the first floor there, sort of the overhang, typical motel hotel, but the energy probably moves very interesting through that as well. And you have the arches there, which is very cool. So that's neat. What can I tell you about this? Um, this is one of them. There's actually 3 of them in Texas that are haunting. Texas does everything big, right? So we got this, the Baker Hotel in Mineral Wells, Texas. We have the Jefferson Hotel in Jefferson, Texas. Look at this. I mean, opulence there on the right, just so awesome. And a cool, not the big grandiose building, but very, very cool. Sort of Old West kind of. And then look at this, the Herring Hotel in Amarillo, Texas. Hopefully going to be doing some work in Amarillo in the next couple of years. Really, really cool town. I haven't been in since 1997. But again, look at this, just towering. I got this neat, I laid 2 side by side here. So you could see the old one from an old postcard with the old cars and all. But then you can see it sort of with this sweeping view going up, and look how deeply that is and how that energy at times probably gets trapped in there, probably gets concentrated and creates, I'm guessing, some really, really cool energy fields, EMF signatures for juicing the ghost there as you would. So there you go. So we're moving on to New Mexico. I'm going to catch every state. I couldn't possibly do everything in every state and try to get it done in any, typically have an hour for a radio show or for a presentation at a conference or an event. So here's the La Fonda Hotel in Santa Fe, New Mexico. This was a Harvey house. And if I wind up doing a whole series just on Route 66, sort of a companion, maybe under a different title, even in the next couple of years, as I'm creative, immersive experiences and all. The Harvey houses are really cool. 1946, same year, Get Your Kicks on Route 66 came out. The Harvey Girls musical with Ashton Kutcher and Santa Fe with Judy Garland came out. Really, really cool, fun film if you like those old big splashy movie musicals, Technicolor kind of thing. But this is the La Fonda Hotel. Beautiful, classic, exactly what you would expect to see in the New Mexico in Santa Fe. So, and then let's move to Flagstaff, Arizona. Now, this is the Hotel Monte Vista. And look at that big signage, right? Route 66 is so synonymous with neon signage, and rightfully so. Just absolutely gorgeous, and a wonderful room here. Now, this is the first one that's really, it's got some celebrities. It's got a little bit more complexity to it on the haunting. So we're kind of finishing big here. This opened January 1st, so New Year's. A lot of hotels opened on big holidays events, oftentimes January 1st, come to our brand new opulent hotel and celebrate the new year, so on and so forth. So this opened January 1st, 1927 as the Community Hotel. So a lot of these hotels and other places have gone through name changes, ownership, even what they're meant to do. And I'll talk about a couple of those multifunctional facilities that are haunted. John Wayne stayed here. Bing Crosby stayed here. Harry Truman stayed here. Well, the Duke, John Wayne, he heard a knock on his door, and then he heard a call that there was room service. Now, this is room 210 at the Hotel Monte Vista. It's the Zane Grain room. So other guests report the same thing, a knock on the door when they didn't order room service. And there is no room service person there, but they hear the person. So this is someone who loved to do their job, loved room service. They knew what they were about. They got to hang out with celebrities. They probably, when they got a buck or two from a John Wayne or a Bing Crosby, they probably never spent it. They probably framed it, put it on their wall. It was really, really cool, and they probably loved their job. Now, some have actually seen an apparition, which I'm very confident is a residual haunting. It doesn't mean that they can, say something. It's just on this loop. That's all they ever say. Call for room service. Call for room service. And they see him in the red coat and gold buttons that, that a bellhop or room service would wear. Now, there's also, I chose a picture, especially from a room where there's a rocking chair. Now, I remember when Tanya and I first got married, her mom was a Southern Baptist from Arkansas, and you did not let a chair rock on its own. It was bad. It was inviting trouble, creating restless spirits. So you did not kick a rocking chair with your foot and just let it go itself. Well, there is a rocking chair. There's a woman. There's also some tragedy here with the Hotel Monte Vista. So if you're looking to go to a hotel on Route 66 that packs a lot of paranormal haunting punch, this could be the one for you here in Flagstaff. 2 prostitutes were also murdered in this hotel in the 1940s. Now, men report who are staying in this hotel, they report the feeling of hands over their mouths and on their throat and unable to breathe. These could potentially be vengeful spirits. That kind of thing happens. It happens all over the world. There's a big tradition of it in Asia, for instance, vengeful ghosts, restless ghosts, all of that kind of thing. Yes, a big Appalachian superstition. So we were well aware of it when we moved, to the Hollow. We moved to West Virginia. That was one of the things we did know because we had so much that we had to figure out. I have one more haunted hotel for you in and this is in Oatman, Arizona, the Oatman Hotel, which is haunted by a prostitute. So we have a theme between these two here named Odie. Oddly enough, she's in room 15. And a little claim to fame here for the Oatman Hotel. Clark Gable, Carol Lombard also are said to haunt a room. I'm quite frankly always kind of skeptical about, there's things about Jim Morrison and there's things about Janis Joplin, which are quite famous, about them haunting hotel rooms. I don't know about that. Obviously, I haven't, investigated every one of those, but, Blackbeard, which was my neck of the woods in North Carolina, supposedly haunted a library that didn't exist. He was never on that land. He was never anywhere near it. And you kind of go, just because his boat, he ditched his boat not too far from here doesn't mean he haunts the library. Excuse me. So people hear them laughing and whispering, but it could be a couple who are laughing and whispering. Maybe this was maybe they ran away. They eloped to get married. Maybe they were having a clandestine affair. Maybe this was the greatest road trip of their entire life and the most money they ever spent to stay at a really cool hotel on the Mother Road. And they were just so much joy and laughter. Or maybe they were just having just a great time and it made an imprint. That's kind of a really nice thing. Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining us. So let's go to theater and entertainment venues. Anyone who knows me and my love of theater and involvement in the theater probably isn't surprised. Now, I'll kind of give you a blanket thing here, and we're going to move quickly through these because most of it is haunted. Disturbances during performances, stage lights go out, scenery breaks, weird things happen, actors hear voices. But think about committed actors trying so hard to play these characters. It's heightened drama, right? Heighten and compress. Jessica's a writer out there. She knows. Heighten and compress. Get on with it. Move it quicker than it would move in real time and really get that tension going up. Raise the stakes. So there's that. There's also the actor's nervousness. There's sometimes a bit of competition trying to be better than the other actor. Everything is big and outsized in the theater. Everything. So we're not surprised that Woodstock Opera House. Operas are so grandiose. The arias and the big and the crying and the armor and the sets and the, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a ghost of a woman in white who is believed to be the spirit of a former actress in this opera house. There you go. Makes perfect sense. Now, this is the Gilloy's Theater in Springfield, Missouri, which is haunted by a former projectionist. That's cool. Gray Barker, who's a paranormal investigator, was a movie distributor, and he knew an awful lot of projectionists. A projectionist is kind of a romantic thing. They're the guys in the movies that, in True Lives, he tells the kid the story. You sit up there in the booth and you play these movies and you see them 1,000 times, and either you're doing crossword puzzles or checking out, but you're not, because the machinery runs hot and you got to kind of do maintenance. You're always changing reels, especially in the old day. This is probably somebody who really, really loved their job, really, really loved movies, and so they're still there looking after the place, still looking after the projectional room. And there's unexplained technical glitches. Well, anytime you have the energy of the paranormal, that's why batteries drain. That's why cameras malfunction. It is a different type of energy that you're engaging with, and it does not play at all well with technology. So there you go. Let's keep moving on. The Brady Theater in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Those of you in the theater that, you got the fly tower, the lobby area there, the high stage area. So there's really nothing there that's unusual. This is your pretty typical theater. It was built in 1914, remodeled in 30 and 52, so constantly keeping it up to date, which is great. These grand old theaters, that's what they needed. So many fell into disrepair, especially in the 1970s. So a lot of care went into it, a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of attention. And they say that the ghost of Enrico Caruso is here. Could be that Enrico just had the performance of a lifetime there in Tulsa. I will tell you, I have been lucky enough to perform in Tulsa on several occasions, and they are some of the best audience members in the entire world. So I would think of that. Oddities happen during performances, that heightened energy, all of those things. Karen, you're still up. Karen's my friend Karen Lutz, fellow actress. Speaking of actresses, theaters, you came at exactly the right time. Yeah, they absolutely do. That's what I was saying, Karen. I'm doing a whole series of them. That's great. Karen's in Scotland right now. She was by my escape room that I designed there. And Karen's working on a project. I can't tell you anything about it, but a documentary that I've been lucky enough to see one of the trailers, and I really hope that she gets the funding for it, because it's an amazing story. And Karen's a wonderful person. Met her in North Carolina. She came on our web investigations. Really cool, open-minded, creative person. Karen, I'm so glad you're here, but the morning is going to come quickly for you when you get back on the road. So let me see here. So let's move on here. So this is one of these multi-use places, the Natatorium, or the Nat, again in Amarillo, Texas. A lot of cool things in Amarillo, Texas. To me, some of my favorites, of course, Tulsa. Nobody will be surprised. Tucumcari, Amarillo, Albuquerque. These are some of my personal favorite towns on the route. So the Natatorium opened in 1922. Buddy Holly played there, Little Richard played there, and the Nat staff talks about seeing ghost couples still twirling around the dance floor. I love that. Tanya and I were in Niagara Falls the day after Christmas, celebrating our anniversary a number of years ago. We got caught in a snowstorm. We were bringing Jeremy, this is during COVID, Jeremy to meet his girlfriend. He had to walk over the bridge into Canada, where she was staying in Toronto, and he stayed with her for a couple months after the permit finally coming through for us to go up in a snowstorm to Niagara Falls. But it was fun. Lots of people saw our crazy videos, like, you're nuts. But we were in this cool little restaurant in our hotel, and I saw a little girl, the ghost of a little girl, the spirit, dancing around those tables in a gingham dress. And I said to Tanya, I'm gonna write down what I see, and you tell me what you see. And it was what I saw. Those are always big moments for me, because they're few and far between, but all the conditions were just right. And it was so quiet. We were having the best time. It was our anniversary. And that was wonderful. So ghost couples twirling around the dance floor, and then the 1930s spirit, which you can tell from hairdo and dress and that kind of thing, with a wine stain on her dress. That's a little sad, but maybe she was just very happy and everything was fine and there was no problem at all. And she was just spilled some wine on her dress in her enthusiasm. So yeah, as a streamed road trip, Craig, oh man, let's put that on our bucket list. Sinister mysteries on the road with a paranormal, supernatural Route 66 road trip. That would be awesome, my brother. We got to find a way to make that happen. I expect to spend a lot of time on Route 66 in the next 2 or 3 years. But anyway, there's the Chemo Theater, which is in Albuquerque. There's one of those, take a left turn at Albuquerque. As Bugs Bunny says, there are ghosts there that, disturb the performances. So there you go. More of that kind of thing. I'm going to move pretty quickly here so we have plenty of time. Museum, club, and zoo. But again, Flagstaff, another cool place. Flagstaff, because they celebrated the first centennial of the United States by putting a flag on a tree, and it became Flagstaff, which is pretty darn cool. So this was the biggest log cabin at one time in Arizona. It was built in 1931, and in 1936, what started out as a museum became a nightclub. The Texas Playboys played there. A 14-year-old Tanya Tucker, I'm really showing my age here, but she was 14 when she played there. And this is supposedly haunted by the former owners Thorna and Don Scott. And this is another tragedy. So when you go there, be respectful. We need to be respectful when there's tragedy afoot. She fell down the stairs and died in 1973. And 2 years later, in his grief, he committed suicide in front of the fireplace. We're not supposed to say that word, but quite frankly, folks, that's what he did. And I can't bring myself to say that he unlived himself. That's just, I don't know. So we'll take our chances with the censors right on that one. The Rialto Theater in Pasadena, California, one of those like the State Theater in Point Pleasant. And there was one in Fairmont in West Virginia we were trying to rehab. These places, when mold gets them, when water gets them, they're no longer up to specs. They're really, really hard to save. Super expensive, putting in everything you need, the updated electrical systems in order to put in the safer lighting systems, to have the sprinkler system. So many of these places stay vacant or are completely gutted. But here's the Rialto Theater. So it was built in 1924, seated 1,200, which is pretty standard for one of these theaters. I performed in a lot of these rehab theaters. About 1,200 seats is standard. Now, in the 1930s, they had vaudeville and trapeze acts. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to announce in the next month, I hope at the latest. There's a little holdup in the halls of government. An escape room that I'm going to be designing that pulls in vaudeville and some of these other cool things in a grand old theater. Really excited. That's all that I can tell you right now. But we're hoping those contracts come through soon, because that's going to be exciting. Trapeze acts in this place. That must have been really cool. Now, the women's bathroom stalls sometimes shake, and there's a ghost of a man who went insane in the projector room. Different vibe than the old, projectorness that I was talking about there. So again, now bathrooms, like I said, are very active, and I have to see, if you see anything, if you wind up going to the Rialto, let me know what you experience. So let's move on to museums. Now, museums are a different kind of creature. Museums have artifacts from throughout time, throughout history, different cultures. Sometimes they have effigies in the way of puppets and statues and dolls and all that kind of thing, or they have women's hats and a big collection of women's hats, and a woman in a beautiful hat feeling beautiful. That's a very powerful energy that stays with it too. So let's look at some of these here. Now, here's the Baxter Springs, Kansas. Got to give Kansas love. It's only 30 something miles, but it's a great 30 miles. It really Baxter Springs gives birth to Radiator Springs in Disney Pixar's Cars. This is where Tow Mater was in Kansas. Right, Larry the Cable Guy. So this is the Heritage Center and Museum, which was a former train depot. And Tanya and I lived across from a train depot in Beaufort, North Carolina when we were there, directly across the street from it. And one day I was just looking out the window, and maybe I was in a semi sort of liminal state, but here comes the train right down the center of the road. It was very cool. So these kinds of things interest me. There's a former train depot. Ghostly figures here, unexplained phenomena, and they also have in Baxter Springs, Kansas, a Nazi flag from the Eagle's Nest in Austria. And I don't have time to go into it tonight, but anybody who's read Watch Out for the Hallway knows about our experiences at the Webb Memorial Library, know that we encountered a Nazi there because his U-boat, and it took us months to figure this out. A lot of research and looking at U.S. Department of Navy records and all other kinds of things. His U-boat was sunk. And in that town, his crew, who despised him when the Navy had them in a concentration camp, in North Carolina because he was very draconian. This guy was all about Hitler, all about the Fourth Reich. He was a model Nazi, but he was a terrible U-boat captain. So that was wild. So when you encounter those kinds of things in strange places, it's always interesting, but there's always a good story. So I did a little consulting for this one, and that's all that I can say. The last time that I was in Tulsa, I did a little consulting because they're having a problem. Gilcrease Museum in Tulsa. This is named for Thomas Gilcrease, and this was a passion project of his to create this museum. Has a large collection of Native American artifacts, which is a double-edged sword, and people have lots of feelings about it. It's a very, very tough thing. Anyway, he died in 1962 and is said to still wander the grounds. And I would believe that. A passion project, you're going to be connected. Doors slam, ghostly children running. The new building is encountering lots and lots of delays. I had some thoughts about it. I had researched it, and I got to talk to some people and do some consulting. So hopefully things are going to turn around for them. But the Greene County Historic Society, the old work farm that Tanya and I were lucky enough to investigate. This has a lot of those same things, the collections of the artifacts, Native American artifacts, lots of contrary energies, as well as the Blennerhassett Museum in Parkersburg, West Virginia, where we were there with Rosemary and she was doing some interviews and things. Sorry, some things fell off my sound system there as I'm hitting the table. So I apologize for that if it popped in your ear. So anyhow, yeah, so there, the children laughing and all of that kind of stuff. A museum is a fun place. You wouldn't be surprised to have residual hauntings there. The Pitcher Mining District. So here we got mining and ghost towns. I'm going to go real quick through this, but I will tell you that if you're going to travel Route 66, do a little research because there's a lot of towns with really counterintuitive names, let me say. So this looks like Miami, but it's actually Miami is how it's pronounced. Miami, Oklahoma. Abandoned mining town, lead, zinc, a lot of the places, the major places in Kansas, Galena, Baxter Springs, lead and zinc mines down into Oklahoma as well. Of course, most toxic ghost town. But look at that old church. That is just stunning. And then ghost towns. I'll just take you through Glen Rio, Two Guns, Arizona, and Jerome, Arizona. They're all laid out there. Literally ghost towns. Here is the big tragedy of the slab. The superhighways, when they came in, they bypassed these towns that only existed because they were on Route 66. And some of them died almost overnight, certainly within weeks, certainly within months. Jim Hinckley, who's Coffee with Jim, I'm going to be on Sunday morning. So watch my social media. I'll let you know just how to hear it. It's going to be a great conversation. Jim's written a lot of books, but he wrote a gorgeous coffee table book about the ghost towns of Route 66, and it's wonderful, and I get up a lot of my information from there. So let's go through some miscellaneous stuff. Hello, Maria. Thanks for welcoming us. Okay, joining us. The old Joliet prison, of course, the Blues Brothers, right? Drive up, pick them up. There it is. Look at that there. But I also have here Moundsville prison. They're very, very similar. Easy to get confused. Prisons, right? Think about it. The agony, the pain, the death. When we went to Moundsville, I got within about 6 feet of old Sparky, the cap for the electric chair. I believe 6 or 8 men died in that electric chair. And I felt like I had been punched in the solar plexus and got pushed backwards. I didn't know what happened. I was just walking. And then suddenly there was this wall of energy, boom, put me back a couple feet, and I looked up and there was old Sparky. So careful when you go to museums. I'm not museums, some museums of the occult, haunted museums. Try to stay away from those places. Actually, people who run those, I apologize, or know people who run them, but you really take a good salt bath after, go down to the water, shake it off. You're probably going to need a soda pop and a candy bar or something like that. After really intense paranormal experiences, we often crave sugar. A lot of nights, I'm not a big soda or candy bar junkie at all, but probably every fourth or fifth night, I needed a candy bar and a Coke after doing the Webb Memorial Library. It's just, how it affects your energy field and what all's going on there vibrationally and all that. So really cool kind of story here. Merrimack Caverns, Stanton, Missouri. So not only did I get to present and meet Joe Hinckley, Michael Wallace, and Joe Sonderman, who were the three great luminaries of Route 66 as far as books and travel and advice about traveling the road. They've all traveled it numerous times. Mike Wallace was the consultant for Disney Pixar's Cars and also the voice of the sheriff, if you're friends. So Mike's a very cool guy. So is Joe. So is Jim. And I got to sit on a panel on Sunday with Jim and Joe, and we talked about the weird, the odd on Route 66, and there's plenty of it. And the showmen, the carnival barkers, the entrepreneurs, those kinds of guys. One of those guys was Lester Dill. So the Merrimack Caverns are 4.6 miles of these underground caverns, said to be Jesse James's hideout for his gang. Visitors sometimes see a mysterious man in black there, which is very, very interesting. And then a man showed up there, and he said that he was actually Jesse James, and his name was J. Frank Dalton. Now, they riffed on this in Young Guns too, right? In a way. But anyway, he lived there. So Lester is credited with inventing the bumper sticker. He was a real promotionalist. He would dress up like Daniel Boone and have this float with a log cabin on it. Really, really cool, and very much in the spirit of Route 66. And also for bumper stickers, there you go. You can thank Lester Dill. There you go. So in Kansas, St. Jacob's Well in Caney, Kansas is haunted by a ghost of a young girl who drowned in the well. So again, that's someplace to go with a great deal of respect when you go there, because a little girl died in that well there, and her spirit or her energy is still there. This is the Rainbow Bridge in Baxter Springs, Kansas. Again, give love to Kansas. Haunted by the spirits of workers who died during its construction. This is also a theme, a very prevalent theme. That fear, the commitment, the defying the fear to skyscrapers and steel monkeys and bridge builders and the old song by the Highwaymen about the men who built the dams and did all these different kinds of things, explorers and pioneers. So that's the Rainbow Bridge. Was worth seeing, going over anyway. Absolutely cool. Then we have the Belvedere Mansion, which is in Claremore, Oklahoma. John M. Bayless began this Victorian style construction. I think quite lovely. I'm a sucker for Victorian architecture. This was in the early 1900s, but he died before it was completed. The family finished it in 1919, so it took quite a while. Toilets flush on their own. It's also a common occurrence, oftentimes in hotels, and people are touched. Again, kind of thing in hotels. So if that's your thing, great. If it's not, that's not a place maybe that you want to stay. The Adobe Deli in Deming, New Mexico. Just a different kind of thing, a haunted deli. You don't hear about that too often. It was a former schoolhouse in the early 1900s. All kinds of ghosts there. And, I don't, as much as I used to, talk about these shows. I just talked about staying out of some of these haunted museums. But Ghost Adventures and, the guy who does that made it the focus that Apaches, right? That's the problem with these shows. They got to hook you. They got to be entertainment. So they come along with this thing. So the poor Apaches, they're the cause of all the paranormal problems. So, just buyer beware on these things. They're running entertainment. They're not trying to figure out the phenomena, what causes the phenomena. They're trying to sell the phenomena to a hungry audience. Shadow, did I mean to ignore you? I just remembered that you said you were here. Welcome, sir, from the great state of California. So here's another one where we got to be really serious about, because they run tours here for this. It's a way to keep the building open. You can see news interviews with people who have gone through it, but this is tragic. The Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri. The Lemps migrated from Germany to St. Louis in 1838. They started what became the largest brewery in the city, by 1870. So they got to work, and within, a couple of decades built something amazing. And that was the Falstaff beer brand. They failed, as you can imagine, during Prohibition, 1922, when the plant closed and was sold to a shoe company. Here is what happened to the family. In 1901, their son Frederick died from heart failure in the house. He was only 28 years old. The tragedy begins. 3 years later, his father, William Sr., shoots and kills himself in the bedroom. 3 other of this man's children die from suicide. 2 of them also do that in the house. In 1922, William Jr. In 1949, Charles. So these are spread out, these tragedies now over 5 decades. Now, the Elsa Lemp Suite, which is named for the daughter, is former slave quarters, and this is very haunted, as you could imagine might be the case. She died elsewhere. She died in her own home, and they think that she might have been murdered, but it was made to look like the other thing. The last son, Edwin, died in 1970. This is very interesting. Edwin instructed his caretaker to burn his art collection and the family heirlooms. So it could very well be that there was something attached, a piece of art, an object, an artifact that was haunting or possibly cursing this family, but highly tragic. So if you ever do go to the Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri, please do it with, while it is a tragic outsized paranormal example of how these things sometimes affect families, we have to do all of this with respect. Charles, nice to see you, sir. Thank you for joining us. And their shadow again, very cool. Men's Hotel in Park City, Kentucky, awesome place. That's cool. Maria, we're talking tonight about Route 66 stuff mostly. Let's see here. So mysterious phenomena. We got the ghost or hornet lights in Joplin, Missouri. So this is lights that people see. They travel, right? Orbs are a major thing. They're a cool entry point for people just getting into the paranormal, to see orbs and learn to see what's a digital artifact on a camera, or a reflection of a car headlight. We've had to do all of those different kinds of things. A street light reflecting off of a piece of warped glass. Lights are the thing you really have to do your diligence on. These are kind of weird, though. They're seen during the Missouri-Oklahoma border. Best place to see them is on Oklahoma East 50. So if you're there or you get out that way, you might want to see them. A clear night, of course, best time to see them. Ball of light dancing on the horizon. So this doesn't sound to me like a bug caught in a camera or anything. Atmospheric gases or headlights in mine areas. So let's see here. Time distortions and time slips. So Route 666 near Gallup, New Mexico. I'm just going to touch on this really quick. I'm going to leave this up, but I do want to tell you about one time distortion time slip that I read about. It was a trucker, and he was driving from St. Louis to Texas. It was the middle of the day. It was sunny. It was a cloudless sky. It became dark, and suddenly there was all this green lightning. Strange white light appeared, causing particles of light to fly past like he was flying high speed, warp speed, or hyperspeed in Star Wars. Then suddenly everything vanished. All the lights, the green lightning, all the phenomena vanished, and 15 minutes turned out to be 3 hours. That was almost 2 hours and 45 minutes is what Tanya and I lost in Point Pleasant in 2009. Tanya's told a cool story. It was in Arizona, but it was not on Route 66, but a diner that she and her friend went to that didn't actually exist. And they went in, and the prices were like 1950s. The art, the architecture, the decoration was like 1950s. They had their meal. They paid for it. And they went on to their destination. They thought it was weird the whole time. They were like, the whole time they were going, we expect to see Elvis come out at any time. When they were driving back, it was gone, completely gone. And it's these shifts, these dimensional shifts, which are really interesting. Is it ball lightning, which I've actually seen? They used to say that was a myth, but I actually saw it in an old coal camp in Philippi, West Virginia. But is that what those lights are? Are two dimensions touching each other and causing these light artifacts in Joplin, Missouri? We don't know, but it keeps us showing up and it keeps us asking the questions, right? So Route 66 outside of Gallup, New Mexico, just really, really quick. To why even talk about this? Because it does end. Its southern terminus intersects T's with Route 66 at Gallup, New Mexico. Route 666, at least at one time, I don't know if still, because not all of Route 66 is drivable. Because the super highways, the slab, as my colleagues call it, circumvented it, and there was no reason to keep up with it. In certain places, it's in really bad shape. Some places are unpassable, but I believe it's 80 or 85% is still drivable of Route 66, which is really, really cool since it was surpassed really in the 70s and into the 80s. But anyway, here's some of the weird things. It's 606 miles, or at least it was Route 666. It is now known as US 491. People have car stalls there. That is a major trope of highway driving, paranormal, supernatural phenomena, oftentimes included with UFOs. A black sedan follows people. It plays chicken with them. Then it disappears without a trace. Sometimes it honks and revs its engine. Sometimes it rear ends the cars. There seems to be no damage to the sedans. When these people get a chance to look at their car, there's actually damage. This is urban legend. This is crazy stuff. This is Supernatural, the TV show. This is, the black sedan is very Men in Black. It's got all of it there. So you see why I'm talking about this tonight. A demon semi-truck that drives at unnatural speeds, targets other cars and those on the shoulder. There's a Utah legend, again, not Route 66, but a truck possessed by a spirit with a grudge against the living. And I think this overlaps in other places, as many urban legends do. The Woman of White legend, so to speak, which certainly is on Route 66. You may, if some of this sounds familiar, you might be thinking about the 1971 film Duel with Dennis Weaver, which was based on a Richard Matheson short story. So like I said, on 666, you might encounter the ghostly hitchhiker, the lady in white. You pull over, she gets into the car, she tells you a very tragic story, she tells you where she lives, and somewhere between where you picked her up and where you're dropping her off, she disappears. We had a great storyteller, Kapanui from Hawaii, who was on the show many years ago when Tanya was co-hosting with me. And he tells a story of someone actually went up to the house, knocked on the door, and described the girl, and she had died in a car accident. Her mother told this man some time ago, and it was right during the time that she was seen. So Lady in White is there. And then cars chased by hellhounds running at high speeds with their claws and fangs, shredding tires, shredding metal, smashing windows, trying to kill the occupants. The creatures run off uninjured when hit, which is how a really good book, I forget the guy's name now, book about Skinwalker Ranch opens up with the family who owned it before Richard Bigelow bought it. It was one of the reasons why they sold it and left. But this rancher, they shot this big wolf creature point blank. It did not bleed, and it simply disappeared. So this is crazy, wild, nutty stuff. Mothman chasing the 57 Chevy, the Mallets and the Scarberries, this high-speed chase with these cars on these highways. It is pure American urban legend. So let's spend a little more time. And now, why do dogs try to bite tires? There you go. These are really, really good. So hi Andy, how you doing? So Route 66, Atomic Age and Aliens. And I've covered a lot of this stuff. I just did 1947, but I want to give you a little context before I go into Kingman, Arizona. So World War II, 12 military bases were built along Route 66, many of them in Arizona, New Mexico, which is why there was an immigration there. Soldiers loved it and wanted to go, wanted to take their families there. That's how Tanya, after her dad got out of the Air Force, he really loved Arizona and he wanted to go there. Now, Los Angeles, which is Route 66, February 24th, 25th, 1942, the Battle of Los Angeles. This was a major UFO flap, enemy attacks, and all kind of anti-aircraft artillery barrage being, I talked about in the 1947 episode a couple weeks ago that Hoover wrote a letter. You can read the letter, right? Freedom of Information Act, where he goes, you kept the saucer from 52 and we don't want to be cut out, or 42. This he's talking about Roswell. We do not want to be out of the loop. The FBI wants a seat at the table when all that was going on. July 16th, 1945 in New Mexico was the Trinity test at Alamogordo. There is a little bit of a Twin Peaks theme here for Twin Peaks fans. The Trinity test, touching off so much stuff, and it's also the Antichrist superstar, Jack Parsons from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, L. Ron Hubbard, and them doing their Babylonian workings and trying to do a sex magic child and ripping open fabric in the universe. This is all happening. June to July, you have Maury Island, you have Arnold and Rainier and Roswell. If you're interested in the events, numerous events in 1947, and the most depth I've ever gone into in Roswell, you can watch that show from 2 weeks ago. July 26th, the National Security Council is established. 33 UFO reports in 1947, several of them, many of them in California, New Mexico, and Arizona, right in proximity to Manhattan Project, Los Alamos, all these military bases that went up, so on and so forth. September 17th, the first Secretary of Defense is named, James Forrestal. September 18th, the CIA is created. Hello. September 24th, Truman creates Majestic 12. September 26th, the U.S. Air Force is created, broken off from the Army, and becomes its own thing. And Project Sign begins, which becomes Grudge, which becomes Blue Book, which becomes Condon Committee, which becomes ATIP, which becomes 1,000 different name changes and people getting involved, mostly to whitewash. July 1952, the U.S. swarm over Washington, D.C. I mentioned that has nothing to do with Route 66, but this is really major. In July of 1952, in November 20th of 1952, Desert Center, California. This is Route 66. George Adamski, some ufologists and enthusiasts may have heard of him, and 6 more people see a cigar-shaped scout ship piloted by the Venusian Orthon. So as we're going into the 1950s, into the 60s, you have Valiant Thor, you have Indrid Cold, all these space travelers that suddenly have names and are talking to people. Valiant Thor is said to have spent 2 years at the Pentagon, that maybe Nixon met with him. Edward Teller, the head of the Atomic Energy Commission, which was founded in January of 1947, he supposedly talked to them. So a Venusian named Orthon. Telepathic communication about the threat of nuclear destruction. I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm reading Dr. Rapuano's unabridged version of Dominion Lost. Brilliant book, and talking about this is definitely a trope. This is definitely a theme. The communication for abductees, contactees, visitors to our planet. You're killing your planet. Your planet is dying. Nukes are a no-no. Now, it would be easy to dismiss George Adamski as a loon, even though 6 other people saw it and all that. But George Adamski received the Papal Gold Medal from Pope John the 23rd, and he briefed Pentagon and European leaders. So there was something that George Adamski said, something about the message, something about the specificity of words that he used, that he got all that attention from the highest level people in the world, arguably. So March 17th to June 1st, 1953, this is a very, very interesting thing here. Operation Upshot Knothole. And I believe this has its own. So there's the mystery objects over the sky of LA. That's anti-aircraft fire. Trinity test, very famous Twin Peaks, right? Image. The Psalm 101 Special Operations Manual, Extraterrestrial Entities, Technology, Recovery, and Disposal. This has to do with Majestic 12 and all. Some people say this is BS. A lot of people say it isn't. But our government created a manual for retrieving UFOs and retrieving bodies, which is leading to where we're going to right now. But saucers outran jet, pilot reveals, Washington Post. Here's Operation Upshot. Thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. This has been a very popular because it adds another dimension to something that's already really, really cool, which is Route 66. And nobody's really doing supernatural paranormal. They're lost my game. So there you go. If I'm known for this as well as for Mothman, that'll be pretty cool. So from March 17th to June 4th of 1953, Operation Upshot Knothole. This was 11 nuclear tests right near Route 66, Nevada National Security Site, Area 51, Tonopah Test Range, registered to the U.S. government, this property. And Craig and I looked at, with the Bundy standoffs on Sinister Mysteries last week, we looked at this government land. I'm reading a really good biography. I believe it's by a David Miller about Teddy Roosevelt. And in the early 1900s, when he first went out and sort of became a cowboy and got that reputation in the Dakota Badlands, you did not own land. You squatted, and it was adjacent and nobody really owned it, and you had your kind of space. There's that. Of course, as we know, that changed, right? I think 1907 was the Oklahoma land rush. So May 18th, 1953, near Kingman, Arizona. And I'm so excited that Jim Hinckley, who's from Kingman, was like, yeah, there's really nothing to see here. I live here. And then suddenly went, no, maybe there is. And he's doing some really cool research and just posted today about some of the things he's working on. This is really interesting. Kingman Army Airfield. So remember, this was built during World War II. So this is pre-1947 when the Air Force broke off and became its own thing. So they were all Army airfields. Roswell at the time was RAAF. If you ever see that acronym, that is Roswell Army Airfield. So that's what that AAF is. Kingman Army Airfield, highly restricted. Had a radar array all around it. Remember that I told you that it has this radar array, but a highly restricted place. And May 18th to May 24th. So this is 6 days. That's what makes this really interesting. One of the theories that Jim is pursuing, and I think it's got to be legitimate, is that a lot of test programs were there and test planes crash. And you want to keep test planes secret. So we know Roswell, Area 51, well, not Roswell, Area 51, other places, a lot of what people were seeing. Maybe, I don't know for sure, but maybe even the Phoenix Lights in 97. And I missed those, folks. I missed the Phoenix Lights by like 3 weeks. They were not separate lights. People pretty much agree on that now. It was either a giant boomerang ship or a giant triangle ship. And it could have been, but the scale was very, very big. I don't know if we have anything that big, but maybe we do. So we have to keep this in mind, that maybe it was what it was. But all these test plane crashes in a row, 18th through 24th, I don't know. So here's what happened. May 18th, 8 saucers are reported. So that's a lot to go out to test with all at once, too. And they're engaged in a dogfight. That's odd. Are they practicing maneuvers? Like, why are they fighting each other? This is very odd. The whole thing is very odd, but it's also very interesting. One makes a forced landing on the desert floor near the Hualapai Mountains. Now, that's spelled Hualapai, but it's Hualapai. And this is in Mojave County. It's about 12 miles southeast of Kingman. So typically when we talk about these crashes, Roswell crash, no, it was some miles away. It's outside of town, doesn't have it right in the town. That would be much harder to dispute. And but they're out by the military bases where there's space and there's air and there's land, which is probably why they're there, to check up on these military bases. May 22nd, another UFO bounces off a mountain and it explodes. May 24th, there's another crash into the mountains. So it seems with the radar array, this is what I feel. And we only know what we know at the time. We postulate, and any responsible investigator has to make sure to say, I don't know for sure. Maybe it was military test planes. Maybe somebody brought it up, made it up. But that's not what I'm entertaining. What I'm entertaining is probably this radar array was messing with these. We see this in Socorro, New Mexico with Lonnie Zamora. This is very well what could have happened. RAAF was a highly secured base. It was the only nuclear bomb group that there was at the time in the world, and it was at Roswell. And suddenly there are these saucers in close proximity to what Kenneth Rainier saw, what they saw at Maury Island that same month within a couple weeks of each other. Very, very interesting. Why did they all come at once? Did they suddenly find us and they sent in all the troops to kind of swarm and scout, and that's what was going on? Anyway, it's a 30-foot aluminum-like saucer, so not a small thing. 30-foot crashes. Now, there was a witness from the Nevada test site, which I talked about. His name was Arthur Stansel, and he was transported with others from Indian Springs Creech AAR to the crash site. So this is like early adoption of, we have a crash and we have to send a special team. This later gives birth to Psalm 1, the standard operating manual at the time of the creation of Majestic 12 and all of that kind of stuff. They did have the microwave radar site array. Now, people have investigated this in depth, certain people, and there is information you can find out there. You can find documentaries and things like that, but they found military food canisters from 1953 at the crash site. Now, could have people from the Kingman Army Airfield gone out to the Wallapai Mountains to have lunch and they took some of their canisters? Yeah, we always have to be responsible, but it's still very interesting. Here's the lore. Sounds so much like Roswell from just 2 weeks ago. UFO crash, 3 bodies, one of them dead, 4 feet tall, silver caps, silver jumpsuits. The law enforcement puts them in a vault beneath the Mojave County Courthouse. This has a precedent, and I forget the year, but the Cape Girardeau crash, which I believe predates, maybe 1942, but predates Roswell, again, where they took the bodies and they put them in the basement of the courthouse. The story was in the papers. It's very hard to find. But there is some information online. The story was carried by some people. 20 military police were supposedly witness to this over the course of from the 18th to the 24th. One of the EBEs supposedly went to Los Alamos, not far away, and other Grays and all have said to go to Los Alamos, including from Roswell, and one to Area 51, certainly. These are called the J-Rods. This is a Gray from Zeta Reticuli. It is your classic big-eyed, almond-eyed, big-headed, small nose, very gangly, just like the Hills talked about. And supposedly these Grays are from Zeta Reticuli, and they had these bodies. Now, a man named Captain Bill Uhouse, Uhouse, he was a mechanical engineer working on reversing engineering craft at S4. That's where Bob Lazar was. So, okay, so that's interesting. He said that he was aware of the presence of the J-Rod. And the last thing I want to tell you tonight, you've been so kind. There's the J-Rod compared to what Tanya saw during our missing time abduction experience. This is, what I would show people at the end. So just bear with us. I want to just show you in this age of crazy deficits and all the political stuff and all that. I just want to tell you this little story that took place courtesy of the Atomic Energy Commission in 1957. And I know some of my colleagues in particular are going to love this story. 1957 Project Carryall. So we have the bomb, and why the hell not use it? Let's try to come up with some non-military uses for the bomb, because we love it, and we love how it looks when it goes off, and it's cool, and it makes us feel good. So they are studying the feasibility of exploding 23 atomic bombs to remove 68 million cubic yards of earth from the Bristol Mountains for the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe. See how this all comes around? I was bringing it around. For the railroad. So rather than using dynamite, let's use atomic bombs to clear the way for our railroad. They spent 15 years, folks, studying this thing. It cost them $770 million. Okay, this is in the 1950s, 1960s. So imagine how much money that would be today. They spent $770 million to try to find $8 million of savings by not using dynamite. That's our government, guys. I love it. And when they detonated some of these bombs for their feasibility study, they made the Sedan crater. So there you go. Let me just run through the rest of these slides. There's only a couple of them. If you're interested, if you want to know more about the stories, you could definitely get the books on Amazon and elsewhere. You can watch the show. You're doing that now. Thanks. Next week, Craig and I will be back. We're going to be doing the Las Vegas shooting. A lot of sinister, a lot of mystery there. So tune in for that one. And I'm creative director at an organization called Live It, and we create immersive experiences. So as you know, I've created the Mothman. I've created the award-winning Karen. Probably went to bed. She's on Scottish time and has to get up really early in the morning to go have a big adventure. Yeah, to blow a new canal across the Nicaragua. There you go, Charles. So they just they love the bombs so much they were just desperate for ways to use them without making war. But anyway, Karen was over at my National Tourism Award winning escape room. But we're really excited. We're going to be creating a lot of stuff on Route 66 Immersive. But the information is there, info@liveitexperiences.com. You can check out our website, liveitexperiences.com. Every other day, I post cool stuff about Route 66 and other interesting things and what we're up to on our Facebook page, Live It Experiences. So you can follow that if you'd like. We're really excited. But if you have an organization, museum, we can even create things in non-dedicated spaces, because the cottage where my escape room is a working cottage, and they just set it up quickly. And the people come in and it's incorporated into their check-in. They play the escape room for an hour, and then they go do something else that's decided upon, and it's taken down. So it's kind of a cool thing. Karen, you're still awake. Oh my goodness. It's like 1 something in the morning, I believe, in Scotland. But anyway, thank you for joining us so much. So I'm going to post some of Karen's photos and introduce you to Karen through some social media posts next year. So that's it. So I'm really excited. I'm always excited, but what the heck? Life's too short to not be excited, even in the face of all the crazy. A little excitement keeps your vibration high. So I hope some of this stuff is interesting to you. I hope you're going to get in your car, support the businesses that are on Route 66. The celebration, the 100th birthday, you're probably going to tire of me talking about Route 66. I apologize, but I'll try to keep giving you really interesting stuff like this. So I kept you an hour and 15 tonight. I hope it was a good hour and 15. I love spending my Thursday nights with all of you folks. Tanya's over doing the last minor league baseball game of the season with some friends, so she wasn't with us tonight. She'll check it out after the fact. Anybody, welcome to check it out after the fact. If you think somebody will get a kick out of this, they're Route 66 enthusiasts, please share it with them. And I will see you all next week with my colleague, Craig Ansel, for another episode of Sinister Mysteries. We were working so hard on this new branding and opening for that show. That's probably going to come out the 50th anniversary. We got really cool stuff that we've been working on. We're bringing in some really nice talent to help us with elements of it. And we're excited to keep bringing you this stuff. Be well, everyone.